Have you ever felt that despite giving your time and energy to others, you're not truly seen or appreciated? It's a question we've all pondered at some point, yet one that often goes unanswered. You've been there for people, always present, always responsive, always willing to lend a hand. But somehow, despite all of your efforts, you find yourself being taken for granted, your presence going unnoticed, your value fading into the background. And the worst part? You never see it coming. Why does this happen? How does someone who is constantly available to those around them end up feeling invisible, discarded, or even ignored? The answer lies in a simple yet profound psychological phenomenon. People often take for granted what they don't have to fight for. We live in a world where availability is abundant and access to others is just a click away. And it is in this hyper-connected world that we find a paradox. The more available we are, the less valuable our presence seems. The more we offer ourselves, the less others seem to appreciate us. But why? Think of the people in your life who are always around. The ones who you can always reach, the ones who never say no. They may be friends, family, or colleagues. But despite their constant availability, do you ever feel that they hold the same value as someone who is harder to reach? When someone is consistently there for us, do we cherish them, or do we simply expect them to always be around, to always be there to meet our needs? At a deeper level, this question touches on a fundamental truth about human nature. We tend to value what is scarce, what is hard to get, and what is not always available. The power of being rare. Human beings, by their very nature, are wired to seek out what is rare. This inclination can be traced back to our evolutionary past. Scarcity often signals value. Think about the way we respond to rare objects or people. When something is scarce, be it food, resources, or attention, we automatically attribute greater value to it, simply because it is harder to come by. This mindset, rooted in survival instincts, is not just about physical resources, but also about emotional and social investments. Consider this. When someone is always available, they become predictable. They lose the intrigue and allure that comes with being rare. Their time and energy become an expectation, not a gift. And over time, the more they make themselves available, the less they are appreciated. This is because, in a strange twist, availability itself becomes a kind of invisible currency. It's everywhere, and thus it is valued less. But it's not just about how others view you. This dynamic impacts your own perception of yourself. If you make yourself constantly available to others, you may begin to feel that your own worth is tied to how much you give. But as you do, you might unknowingly start to lose something vital, your own sense of self-respect. When we constantly bend to the needs of others, we stop valuing our own time. Our availability starts to define us, rather than our unique qualities or talents. Our worth becomes linked to how much we sacrifice for those around us, and in doing so, we erase the very boundaries that make us unique. The cost of constant availability. Think about it. How often do you find yourself apologizing for taking time for yourself, for setting boundaries, for saying no? It's as though society has conditioned us to believe that our worth is determined by our constant presence, our readiness to be available, to give. But this myth, the myth that availability equals value, often leads to disappointment, burnout, and the painful realization that the more available we are, the less we are truly seen. This paradox extends beyond personal relationships. It spills over into our professional lives, our social circles, and even the digital spaces we inhabit. In today's world with social media and instant messaging, we are more accessible than ever before. We are expected to respond instantly, to be always online, to never miss a call or a message. Yet the more available we make ourselves in this digital age, the more we risk losing our own sense of significance. And so we are left with a question that lingers in the background of our modern lives. If being always available causes us to lose value, then what is the true cost of constant accessibility? Is our desire to be there for others constantly, readily, unconditionally worth the price we pay in terms of how we are perceived, how we are treated, and how we see ourselves? As we delve deeper into this concept, We will explore the psychology behind this dynamic, uncovering the layers of human behavior that drive us to devalue those who are always around, and the toll it takes on our own self-worth. We will examine how scarcity shapes our relationships, both personal and professional, and how it impacts our sense of identity in a world that demands constant availability. And ultimately, we will question whether it's possible to reclaim our value not by giving more of ourselves but by giving less. Why we crave what's rare. In a world where everything is increasingly accessible, there exists a paradox. The more something is available, the less we tend to value it. Think about the way we treat the people in our lives who are always around. Friends, family members, colleagues, or even social media influencers who are constantly posting. We take them for granted, expecting them to always be there, their presence so predictable that it loses its significance. But when something is rare, when it's not easily attainable, it sparks a different response in us. We crave it, we desire it, we value it. This behavior can be traced back to something fundamental in human psychology, a principle known as scarcity. Scarcity isn't just about physical resources, it's about perception, about how our brains respond to things that are hard to get, and how we have evolved to place a higher value on those things that require effort to obtain. The key to understanding this is a psychological concept called reactance theory. Reactance theory, first introduced by social psychologist Jack Bream in the 1960s, explains that when we perceive something as being restricted or scarce, we feel a sense of loss or deprivation, which makes us want it even more. In essence, reactance theory suggests that people are naturally inclined to desire things they cannot easily have. The more we are told we can't have something, or the more difficult it becomes to attain, the more we want it. This principle can be seen everywhere, from the desire for rare collectibles to the attraction to forbidden or inaccessible relationships. It's a pattern that dates back to the survival mechanisms of our ancestors. Early humans lived in a world of limited resources. Water, food, shelter. These were all scarce commodities, and the scarcity of such resources created value. Those who could obtain or control these limited resources were valued, and those who couldn't were left behind. The ability to identify and desire scarce resources was a key part of survival. This evolutionary wiring still exists in us today, though in modern times, it often applies not to physical resources, but to intangible ones like attention, affection, and status. Scarcity has become a signal of value. We subconsciously associate rarity with worth. A relationship that is hard to access, a product that is in short supply, a limited time offer. All these create a sense of urgency in us, triggering deep emotional and psychological reactions. Scarcity sells. Why less access means more value. One of the clearest examples of this can be seen in the way people interact in romantic relationships. Think about the concept of playing hard to get. The person who is always available, always responsive, loses some of their allure, while the one who is less available becomes more desirable. This is not because the less available person is inherently more attractive, but because availability has become a commodity, and like any commodity, its value increases the less it is accessible. In fact, many dating experts recommend playing hard to get as a strategy, not because it's a game, but because it taps into a deep-seated psychological drive. The more someone is perceived as out of reach, the more attractive they become. But it's not just in personal relationships where scarcity plays a crucial role. Scarcity is manipulated in marketing and advertising all the time. Think of the limited edition sneakers that are released in small batches, or the exclusive membership clubs that offer restricted access. Companies use artificial scarcity to manipulate demand. By making a product or service appear rare or difficult to obtain, they increase its perceived value. The scarcity principle is one of the most powerful tools in advertising. Consider the frenzy that often accompanies limited-time offers or one-day-only sales. Consumers rush to purchase because they fear missing out, not because the product is inherently more valuable. Take, for example, the rise of high-demand items like concert tickets or luxury brand products. When you see a sold-out sign, your desire for the item often intensifies. A product, whether it's a piece of clothing or a piece of technology, doesn't change in value because it's sold out. Rather, it becomes more desirable because the perception of it being scarce triggers a deeper emotional response. This is scarcity in its purest form, making something desirable by making it feel unattainable. The workplace offers another powerful example. Think about the value of someone in your office who seems constantly busy, always working on important tasks, rarely available for casual chit-chat. The scarcity of their time and attention, whether real or perceived, creates an air of prestige around them. Contrast this with someone who is always available to meet, answer emails, or participate in every project. The constant availability of their time makes their presence seem less valuable because there is no urgency to engage with them. This concept is also evident in the rise of social media and the influencer culture. Social media platforms thrive on the scarcity of attention. In an era of constant connectivity, influencers and content creators must fight for their followers' attention by offering something rare, whether it's exclusive behind-the-scenes content, limited-time offers, or curated experiences. The more a creator's content is perceived as unique or inaccessible, the more followers flock to them. The content that's hardest to get, whether it's an invitation to an exclusive event or an inside look at someone's life, becomes the most coveted. Even in professional settings, the idea of scarcity of time plays a central role. Take leaders or CEOs, for instance. Their time is often limited and therefore perceived as highly valuable. The more they are seen to be in demand or hard to reach, the higher their perceived worth. Conversely, those who are always available to others, constantly answering emails, attending meetings, or offering help, may not be seen as contributing in ways that truly enhance their value or prestige. Scarcity is not merely a product of external circumstances, it is deeply embedded in our psychology. It taps into our primal instincts and is woven into the fabric of our social interactions. The more we are told something is rare, the more we want it, whether that something is a relationship, a product, or even a person's time and attention. It's crucial to understand that scarcity doesn't always have to be a deliberate external force. Sometimes we create scarcity ourselves by choosing when to be available and when to withhold. When we make ourselves too available, we erase the natural dynamics of scarcity, rendering our presence, whether it's in a relationship, at work, or even online, less valuable. The key is not to overextend ourselves. Instead, we need to strategically manage our availability, reinforcing the idea that our time and attention are limited and therefore precious. In the next part of this discussion, we will explore how modern technology, the digital age, and our constant access to information have shifted the way we view scarcity. The more connected we are, the more availability becomes expected, and the more we risk devaluing our own presence and attention. We live in an age of constant connection. Our phones, our computers, and our social media platforms keep us tethered to one another, offering access at all times, in all places. With the tap of a screen, we can contact someone on the other side of the world, share a moment of our lives in an instant, or respond to a text within seconds. In this age of hyper-availability, where everything and everyone is just a click away, the question arises, has all this constant connection made us more valued or less? At first glance, constant access to communication and information seems like a gift, a way to remain close to people, to stay in touch with the world around us, to be instantly responsive. But, as with many aspects of modern life, this gift comes with unintended consequences. The very availability that technology grants us can also be the very thing that undermines the value of our presence. Our time becomes so accessible, so easily obtained, that it loses its worth. And what's worse, we may not even realize how we've become part of this paradox until it's too late. Consider how we interact now. Social media platforms, messaging apps, and emails demand our attention at all hours of the day. Unlike past generations, where communication was often limited by time zones or physical distance, we now have the expectation of being reachable anytime, anywhere. This immediacy, this constant stream of messages, alerts, and updates, has given rise to an almost Pavlovian response: the desire to be always available and responsive. The idea that we are always on has become the norm in our society. Our phones buzz and beep at all hours, and in many cases, there is a social expectation to respond quickly. Being unreachable or taking too long to respond is often seen as rude, dismissive, or even disrespectful. In the past, if someone didn't respond to a letter or phone call immediately, it was understood that there could be valid reasons for the delay. But now, with texts, social media, and emails, silence is more likely to be met with frustration. The cost of constant connection. What does this constant demand for availability do to the value of our presence? The more often we make ourselves available, the less we seem to be valued. People don't need to wait for our attention. They know it's always just a tap away. And this knowledge that someone is always available can subtly affect how people perceive you. Your time, your presence, your attention. It all becomes something that can be expected at any moment, without question, and as a result, it loses its uniqueness. One of the most significant psychological byproducts of this constant availability is the phenomenon known as FOMO, the fear of missing out. This pervasive feeling occurs when we believe that by not being constantly plugged in, we are missing out on something important or valuable. In a world where everyone shares their every moment on social media and responds to messages within seconds, the idea of being disconnected feels unnatural. But FOMO also plays into the paradox of availability. The more we feel the need to be connected to others at all times, the less we are able to truly appreciate those moments when we are present with someone, or even with ourselves. FOMO stems from our perception that other people's experiences, relationships, and lives are more interesting or more fulfilling than our own. And the fact that we can witness these experiences through social media exacerbates this feeling. When we see someone posting a picture from a vacation or announcing a new achievement, we feel the pressure to keep up, to remain visible, to engage. This creates a never-ending cycle. The more available we make ourselves to others, the more others expect us to respond quickly, and the more disconnected we feel when we are not part of the constant stream of notifications. In personal relationships, this dynamic can lead to resentment or a sense of being undervalued. When we are constantly available to friends, family, and colleagues, they begin to take us for granted. There is no longer a sense of effort or investment in reaching out. No anticipation, no appreciation for the time spent together. People begin to assume that you'll always be there, and if you're not, they feel slighted. Over time, this sense of entitlement can erode the quality of our relationships, leaving us feeling drained, unappreciated, and even invisible. The workplace illusion: always available, rarely valued. In the workplace, this paradox plays out in ways that can be just as damaging. With the advent of email, messaging apps, and mobile phones, the boundary between personal and professional time has become increasingly blurred. Many employees feel the need to be on at all times, responding to emails, answering calls, and attending meetings even outside of normal office hours. This constant state of availability can breed resentment and burnout. It creates the illusion of productivity, always being reachable, always responding, without actually contributing to meaningful work. Employers may not even be aware of the subtle impact of demanding constant availability. They may assume that having access to an employee at all times is a sign of dedication or commitment. But in reality, this always available culture can have the opposite effect. It leads to disengagement, dissatisfaction, and ultimately a decrease in the quality of work. Employees may begin to feel as though their time is not their own, that their presence is only valued in relation to their immediate availability. This lack of respect for personal boundaries can lead to increased stress and anxiety, further contributing to the devaluation of one's time and energy. In both personal and professional contexts, the culture of being always available is beginning to take a toll. We've become so accustomed to being reachable at all times that we've lost sight of the importance of presence, the power that comes from being selectively available, from engaging fully in the moments when we choose to be present. Reclaiming presence. The power of boundaries in an always-on world. In some ways, we've forgotten how to say no, and in doing so, we've created a system where our value is measured by how much we give to others. The more we are expected to be available, the less our presence is appreciated. When everyone can reach us at any moment, our time becomes something that is taken for granted, not something to be treasured. But there's hope. By reasserting boundaries, by reclaiming our right to be unavailable when we choose, we can begin to reverse this paradox. When we stop being available at all times, we regain control over our time and, in turn, restore the value of our presence. The key is learning to be selectively available. We don't have to be always on. We can choose when to engage and when to withdraw, recognizing that our time is precious and worthy of respect. Ultimately, the paradox of availability challenges us to think about how we value ourselves and how we allow others to value us. It asks us to reconsider our relationships with technology, with communication, and with the people in our lives. The more we make ourselves available, the less we are truly seen. But by reintroducing scarcity, by choosing when and where to be present, we can begin to reclaim our time, restore our self-respect, and reestablish the value of our presence in an increasingly disconnected world. Stop being always available. Start valuing yourself. At the heart of every meaningful relationship, whether personal, professional, or social, lies one crucial element: boundaries. Boundaries are not just about protecting our personal space. They are about protecting our self-respect. In a world where instant communication and constant availability have become the norm, the importance of boundaries has never been more apparent. Yet, in our desire to be there for others, we often forget the vital role they play in maintaining our self-worth. Self-respect is more than just feeling good about oneself. It is rooted in our ability to maintain dignity in the face of external pressures and expectations. Philosophers like Jean-Paul Sartre and Immanuel Kant emphasize the importance of treating oneself with the same respect that one would show others. Sartre argued that each individual is responsible for their own choices and must respect their autonomy, as that is what defines one's essence. Similarly, Kant's moral philosophy stressed that we must treat ourselves as ends in themselves, not merely as means to an end. By acknowledging our intrinsic value, we set the groundwork for healthy boundaries and self-respect. When we are constantly available, however, we undermine this very concept of self-respect. We begin to allow others to define our worth through their demands and expectations, rather than asserting our own value. This surrender of autonomy doesn't just affect how others perceive us, it also erodes our self-perception. The more we make ourselves available to others without considering our own needs, the less we are able to value ourselves. Why people start taking you for granted. Being too available often leads to negative consequences, both in how we are viewed by others and in how we view ourselves. The most apparent consequence is the loss of respect from others. When we are always at someone's beck and call, when our time and attention are always on display, we risk becoming predictable and easy to access. This predictability creates a situation where people begin to take us for granted. Imagine a friend who constantly says yes to every request, no matter how trivial. While they may initially appear to be helpful or accommodating, over time, their availability begins to diminish their value in the eyes of others. In relationships, this often leads to a lack of appreciation. People begin to expect the same level of access without giving the other person the space to assert their own needs. This dynamic can breed resentment and paradoxically push people away. In professional environments, the consequences of being overly available can be even more damaging. If someone is always available to take on additional work, respond to emails, or attend meetings, they may begin to be seen as someone who has no boundaries. This may lead others to undervalue their contributions or assume that they are available for everything, even if it means sacrificing their own well-being. This can result in burnout, disengagement, and a decline in professional satisfaction, loss of respect from others. Psychologically, the act of being always available takes a toll on our emotional and mental well-being. It fosters feelings of desperation and neediness. When we prioritize the needs of others above our own, we begin, to internalize the belief that our value is tied to our availability. We feel that if we are not constantly giving, we are not worthy of attention, affection, or respect. This mindset, however, erodes our confidence and self-worth, leaving us feeling empty and depleted. Furthermore, being overly accessible can trigger feelings of resentment and exhaustion, particularly when our efforts go unreciprocated. We give and give, expecting something in return, only to find that our time and energy are taken for granted. The result is a cycle of burnout, of giving too much, too often, without taking the necessary steps to care for ourselves. Boundaries are crucial not only for maintaining self-respect, but also for fostering healthy relationships. Boundaries allow us to define where our needs end and where the needs of others begin. They create a space where we can prioritize ourselves without feeling guilty. By maintaining these boundaries, we signal to others that we are worthy of respect and that our time is valuable. Take, for example, a professional who sets clear limits on when they are available for meetings or calls. By setting these boundaries, they demonstrate respect for their own time and energy. As a result, others are more likely to value their input and contributions. The same is true in personal relationships. When we respect our own needs and communicate them effectively, we create a space for mutual respect and understanding. In contrast, without boundaries, we risk becoming a doormat, someone who is constantly expected to give without receiving in return. Over time, this imbalance can lead to feelings of resentment, frustration, and a sense of being undervalued. This cycle ultimately erodes the foundation of the relationship itself, the importance of self-worth. In the end, the most important boundary we can establish is the one that we set for ourselves. By recognizing our own value and treating our time and energy with the same respect we would offer to others, we create a foundation for healthy, respectful relationships. We learn that we are not defined by our availability, and that our worth is intrinsic, not tied to how much we give or how often we are present. By maintaining boundaries and respecting our own needs, we reclaim our power. We stop allowing others to dictate our worth through their demands and instead begin to define our value on our own terms. When we value ourselves, others are more likely to value us in return. And when we set boundaries, we not only protect our time and energy, but we protect our dignity and self-respect. In a world that demands constant availability, there lies a paradox. Sometimes, absence is the greatest form of presence. The concept of playing hard to get is often seen as a tactic for romantic relationships, but its application stretches far beyond that. In fact, it is a broader social strategy that can shape how we are perceived in every interaction, whether personal or professional. Philosophers like Friedrich Nietzsche explored the concept of absence in profound ways. Nietzsche, in particular, believed that presence in its full force must be selective. For him, those who sought to maintain their value had to preserve a sense of mystique, making their presence rare and impactful rather than ubiquitous and predictable. When someone is too readily available, their presence becomes mundane, expected, and ultimately undervalued. But when absence is woven into the equation, it creates a desire for connection, a longing to bridge the gap. Creating space to increase value. Think about it. The people we most often admire, whether in relationships or in our professional lives, are not the ones who are always present, constantly seeking attention. They are the ones who offer their time selectively, and their absence only deepens the allure of their presence. The absence allows for space in which others can miss them, reflect on their words, or simply appreciate their value. Nietzsche might argue that we should cultivate our own presence by ensuring it is not given away freely, but rather selectively and deliberately. This strategy isn't just about being elusive or playing a game, it is about self-respect. If we are always available, we may inadvertently communicate that our time is cheap, that we do not value ourselves enough to create boundaries. True respect for yourself and for others sometimes requires stepping back, creating space, and letting the natural value of your time become evident. By maintaining a certain distance, we give others the opportunity to appreciate what they might otherwise take for granted. So how do we regain our value in relationships? We start by setting boundaries, by consciously choosing when to engage and when to withhold. It's not about being absent all the time, it's about being strategically present. When we reintroduce scarcity, we make our time and attention something worth pursuing, something that must be earned rather than expected. The deeper truth is this: true value doesn't come from giving endlessly. It comes from being selective, from choosing when to offer our time and presence, and recognizing that our worth is defined by the moments when we decide to share it.